The two typical men of genius whom I have mentioned here, and with whose names I have begun this book, are very symbolic, if only because they have shown that the fiercest dogmatists can make the best artists. In the fin de siècle atmosphere, everyone was crying out that literature should be free from all causes and all ethical creeds. Art was to produce only exquisite workmanship, and it was especially the note of those days to demand brilliant plays and brilliant short stories. And when they got them from a couple of moralists. The best short stories were written by a man trying to preach imperialism. The best plays were written by a man trying to preach socialism. All the art of all the artists looked tiny and tedious, besides the art which was a byproduct of propaganda. The reason indeed is very simple. A man cannot be wise enough to be a great artist without being wise enough to wish to be a philosopher. A man cannot have the energy to produce good art without having the energy to wish to pass beyond it. A small artist is content with art. A great artist is content with nothing except everything. So we find that when real forces, good or bad, like Kipling and GBS, enter our arena, they bring with them not only startling and arresting art, but very startling and arresting dogmas. And they care even more and desire us to care even more about their startling and arresting dogmas than about their startling and arresting art. Mr. Shaw is a good dramatist, but what he desires more than anything else to be is a good politician. Mr. Rudyard Kipling is by divine caprice and natural genius an unconventional poet, but what he desires more than anything else to be is a conventional poet. He desires to be the poet of his people, bone of their bone and flesh of their flesh, understanding their origins, celebrating their destiny. He desires to be poet laureate, a most sensible and honourable and public-spirited desire. Having been given by the gods originality, that is, disagreement with others, he desires divinely to agree with them. But the most striking instance of all, more striking, I think, even than either of these, is the instance of Mr. H.G. Wells. He began in a sort of insane infancy of pure art. He began by making a new heaven and a new earth, with the same irresponsible instinct by which men buy a new necktie or buttonhole. He began by trifling with the stars and systems in order to make ethereal anecdotes. He killed the universe for a joke. He has since become more and more serious, and has become, as men inevitably do when they become more and more serious, more and more parochial. He was frivolous about the Twilight of the Gods, but he is serious about the London Omnibus. He was careless in the Time Machine, for that dealt only with the destiny of all things, but he is careful and even cautious in Mankind in the Making, for that deals with the day after tomorrow. He began with the end of the world, and that was easy. Now he has gone on to the beginning of the world, and that is difficult. But the main result of all this is the same as in the other cases. The men who have really been the bold artists, the realistic artists, the uncompromising artists, are the men who have turned out, after all, to be writing with a purpose. Suppose that any cool and cynical art critic, and any art critic fully impressed with the conviction that artists were greatest when they were most purely artistic, suppose that a man who professed ably a humane asceticism, as did Mr. Max Beerbohm, or a cruel asceticism, as did Mr. W.E. Henley, had cast his eye over the whole fictional literature which was recent in the year 1895, and had been asked to select the three most vigorous and promising and original artists and artistic works. He would, I think, most certainly have said that for a fine artistic audacity, for a real artistic delicacy, or for a whiff of true novelty in art, the things that stood first were Soldiers 3 by a Mr. Rudyard Kipling, Arms and the Man by a Mr. Bernard Shaw, and The Time Machine by a man called Wells. And all these men have shown themselves ingrainedly didactic. You may express the matter, if you will, by saying that if we want doctrines, we go to the great artists. But it is clear from the psychology of the matter that this is not the true statement. The true statement is that when we want any art tolerably brisk and bold, we have to go to the doctrinaries.